Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting of the 19th of November 2014. Welcome to Your Worship, the Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the public. Committee afternoon tea is at 3 p.m, and for members of the public there's a tea trolley out in the foyer. Please help yourself, and you can come and go in the chamber. Also welcome to our online viewers as well. Just making sure everyone in the chamber has their cell phones. Please turn to silent, very helpful. So with that, I open the meeting. I just ask that we stand for a 1 minute silence to take a moment to reflect on the tragic loss of the three lives last weekend at the fire. Thank you. Right. Right, apologies. We have apologies for lateness from Councillor Gallagher.
Councillor McPherson.
Well, he's right here. See, I spotted him. And that's all. Everyone else is present. So with those, I will move that apology, seconded by Councillor Young. Thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? That's carried, thank you. Now, confirmation of the agenda. You've got a run sheet in front of you. There's a couple of, we had some issues yet again with Info Council printing images and all sorts of things. So we will, as we get to those items, Democracy will give you the pieces of paper. Mainly they're just with photo images. And of course, item 13, the Hamilton Ring Road report, has been pulled, as you know. So with that, I will move confirmation of the agenda. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Green. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Wilson's very interested.
I am.
You have to say that.
I do.
There's some things I'm not really
Okay, yeah, I heard that, Councillor Mallett. Right, now we'll move to the public forum, and we have one speaker in the public forum, Teresa Ahukawhenua. Hi Teresa, welcome. Kia ora. Teresa, you have 3 minutes to talk. Thank you, and I think Teresa is talking about the safety plan, so go ahead.
My name is Teresa Ahukawhenua, thank you. I did not attend the submissions for Safety in Public Places bylaw. Greetings everyone. I'm a 58-year-old single parent with 2 teenage children and an older child. I've been studying now for the last 3 years in social services at Te Wānanga o Aotearoa. I've also been a voluntary cook for Hamilton Homeless Trust, who originally started as Hamilton Homeless, and I do a bit of voluntary work with other community groups around Hamilton. I put in a submission because I was kind of concerned about some of the things that came out around the new bylaw, around the bylaw, and the ways that I guess council and authorities wanted to address the situation. And I've come today seeing what decisions you have written up in this report, and I actually already like what you've done. I have still concerns because I've seen enough homeless people who don't come from low-income families, who don't have low-income backgrounds and don't come from residual crime-wave families. They come from ordinary working families who have lost opportunities and chances to improve their lifestyles. I've met families that have separated because husbands and wives cannot live in the same house without extreme financial difficulty, so they've had to separate, and probably mum and the children stay on a benefit, but dad has to move away so that the family can get a reasonable amount of finance. I've found people doing the opposite, where the women have become homeless so that the men can take care of the children because they do a better job of it. These are some of the reasons why I was a little bit surprised about some of the talk that came out about the bylaw. I guess for me, the last time I actually came to this chamber was about the prostitution bill that came to the city. I have a very high moral standard. Regardless of all the things that have happened around me, I actually believe that all of you have some sort of moral standard that brings you into this arena, and you want to do right by the people that you are serving. My concern is, and has been for a long time, is that I don't want to see those who are at the mercy of their own circumstances penalised even more. I guess I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. I just wanted to bring a hopeful voice to people who could make decisions that could guide the wisdom of the people. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Any questions from the committee? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, there are no further speakers in the public forum, so we'll move on to item 5. The minutes of the 15th of October Strategy and Policy Committee. Now, with the leave of the committee, I would like to table a letter that has been received from the New Zealand Fire Service. And this letter is from Ron Devlin, the Fire Region Manager from the Hamilton Fire Brigade. And he has asked that that be tabled and also that I read this letter. So I'm going to do that. Councillor McPherson?
Madam Chair, isn't the proper thing to do the minutes? Because the minutes are a record about, is that what you're on?
Yes, I am.
Do the minutes of the meeting we've had, and if there's an extra item of business, that comes up later, because this letter, while it may refer to that, I don't think we've already had a case like this recently where the minutes were the minutes, and then if there were extras, that was a separate
so
issue.
Yeah,
The meeting note thing I did.
I did check with the democracy manager because I initially thought that was the way to go. So Jude, can we have some advice from you on this, please?
Madam Chair, it's really up to you as Chair whether you want to receive this piece of information relating to the minutes now or adopt the minutes as a true and correct record and then receive it. Madam Chair, it's up to you the way you want to.
Madam Chair, I just find it strange for us to talk about adding something or unless it's a mistake that needs correcting in the minutes.
Okay, there is Councillor Mallett.
Very hard to determine what to do because we haven't read this yet. So you're going to read it.
Well, yes, I've been asked to read it.
And is this, and I haven't read it. Is this someone saying that something in the minutes are wrong?
So this is a letter that's been received from the fire service. They have requested that it be tabled at this meeting and read out at this meeting.
For the purpose of correcting the minutes or just adding more information?
To adding more information to the minutes.
Madam Chair, for clarity,
thank you.
It might be useful to adopt the minutes as a true and correct record and then refer it as a matter arising from the minutes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so with that, I will move the minutes. Can I
I'll
have
second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Right, so matters arising from the minutes. I've been given a letter from the New Zealand Fire Service, the Hamilton Brigade.
Point of view, you haven't actually passed that resolution. You've got a mover
No,
and a
we've got a
seconder.
mover and a seconder. So,
Everybody favour.
Jude, do
Then
we
you've got to
have to
go-
vote, or we're having discussion and debate?
Oh, sorry. Beg your
Because the
pardon.
motion's on the table.
Sorry.
Is that correct?
It's either way, Madam Chair. You can receive them as a true and correct record and get the minutes adopted and out of the way, and then treat this as a matter arising from the minutes.
Okay, let's do that then. So it's been moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. So a matter arising from the minutes is I have received a letter from the New Zealand Fire Service Hamilton Brigade, and I've been asked to table the letter and read the letter. So I'm going to do that.
Point of order.
What's your point of order, Councillor King?
Is it correct that a letter can be tabled at a meeting without myself or anyone else pre-reading it, without giving a chance
All right, we'll go to the thing.
of response?
Yeah.
Or
Democracy Manager, can I have your advice, please?
Madam Chair, I would consider this appropriate as a matter arising from the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have to say that I having just glanced at the letter, having just glanced at the letter, I'm uncomfortable. I disagree. I actually agree with what I'm seeing there, but I think the process is not fair for the reasons that Councillor King was alluding to. I mean, I disagreed with some of the things he said, but I think it's pretty clear that it's pointing the finger, at least one part of this letter, and, you know, it's not something that should be landed on us and without notice. I find that not quite right.
So what about just tabling the letter then? We table the letter and I don't read the letter.
well, surely by tabling the letter, I had no chance to look at this, digest it, or any right of reply. The letter that I circulated, that was circulated at the last meeting, was circulated a week before, so people could digest it and come back with their thoughts.
Madam
So,
Chair,
yeah.
I wonder though, I support the letter being tabled. I don't believe there is a requirement for this letter to have been circulated to any party in advance. There is really no difference, I would suggest, in the presentation of this letter than somebody at the public forum part of the meeting wanting to address an item or an issue that had arisen through a previous council meeting. So although I can understand Councillor McPherson's concern as to process, there is no doubt that under standing orders you are permitted to address an issue arising from an item from the minutes, and as such I would have thought standing orders permit this.
Democracy Manager, can you comment on that, please?
Standing orders do not preclude the chair from receiving this piece of information and tabling it as a matter arising from the minutes. And when standing orders are not clear, then it's up to the chair to make a ruling on that, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't the agenda supposed to be circulated before the meeting so that we can digest what's being discussed? And the correct place for this to have been tabled would have been in the public
So
forum.
Democracy Manager, would you like to answer that question, please?
Lead work out, you're getting in it.
Through you, Madam Chair, the councillor is indeed correct. A council or committee agenda is circulated prior to the meeting in accordance with the legislation. This is a matter arising from the minutes and is related to an item on the minutes, and I would consider it appropriate for you as chair to make a ruling to circulate that information.
Madam Chair, in most organisations that I've ever been involved in, there is an item on the agenda called, which usually immediately follows the presentation of the previous meeting's minutes, saying matters arising. It's actually a separate item, and Chair will call for matters arising from those minutes, and we have no such thing on our agenda, which is again why I tend to agree with Councillor King's points in relation to the process.
All right, this is how I'm going to approach this one. Standing orders 3.5.7 here in my book say that a minor matter not on the agenda may be discussed. Where an item is not on the agenda for a meeting, the item may be discussed at the meeting if the matter is minor and relating to general business of council, and the preceding member explains at the beginning of the meeting at the time when it is open to the public that the item will be discussed at the meeting, but no resolution, decision or recommendation can be made on that item. So I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to indicate that I'm going to put this letter on the agenda as an item for discussion. Democracy Manager, do I have to move that? I would have to move that, wouldn't I?
Point of order, that was supposed to be
Mine
done when the public forum was open. It's closed now.
No, I'm sorry, Councillor King, that's not a point of order, and I'm not making a submission in the public forum. Democracy, do I have to move and second that?
No, Madam Chair. Standing orders said the item is a minor matter relating to the general business of council, and the presiding member, which is you, explains at the beginning of the meeting, which is now at a time when it is open to the public, that the item will be discussed at the meeting, but no resolution, decision or recommendation may be made in respect of that item, except to refer that item to a subsequent meeting of the council for further discussion.
Thank you.
I'd just like,
So,
I'd like it recorded on the minutes that this hasn't given
So, sorry, Councillor King, if you just wait a moment. So the item is going onto the agenda, so we can have a discussion then. Is that correct, Democracy Manager?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. We'll park it. All right, thank you. So we're going to go, so we've moved, I've moved the minutes. Councillor Wilson has seconded the minutes, and Councillor McPherson will take that on board about the,
And they have been carried, Madam Chair.
and they have been carried.
Yes.
Yeah.
You put them to vote.
Sorry, I did. About that matters arising, it's the point. All right, so we'll go on to item 6, page 14.
So what have we done with this letter?
I received it.
Parked it. That's a formal, is that a formal term?
At what point on the agenda is it now come up?
After afternoon tea.
Okay, thank you.
So we're on page 14. Item 6 is significance and engagement policy. Welcome Aaron and Tegan. And take the report as read. And for our online viewers, this is a change in our policy as a part of the government reform to local government. So, thank you. So take the report as read. Any questions? Very dry mouth. No questions. Right, there being no questions then, do I have a mover for this report? Councillor Pascoe
I'll second.
and seconded by Councillor Forsyth. Any discussion?
Just one question, sorry. There is a special consultative process. How does this correspond to that? How does that relate to this?
So the special consultative process is a requirement through the LGA.
Yep.
There are a number of decisions that require that by legislation.
And they're clearly, sorry to interrupt, they're clearly identified as the 10-year plan, the annual plan.
They are clearly identified either in the LGA or in other forms of legislation, such as the Gambling Act,
Okay.
the Psychoactive Substances Act. This policy in Schedule 2 talks about when council will use the special consultative procedure, and it just refers back to when it's required to by law. So it just draws the link.
Thank you.
Right, so no further questions being moved by Councillor Pascoe, seconded by Councillor Forsyth. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, item 7, page 27, the Hamilton Cemeteries Draft Management Plan. We've got Liz and Lance, welcome.
Renee.
Renee, sorry. Sorry, Renee. Right, you can take the report as read as well.
Madam Chair, we're happy to answer any questions. Just wanted to highlight that there's been consultation with a number of parties through the drafting process, including the Heritage Advisory Panel. And I think just to draw your attention to recommendation C around appointing some members to a hearings panel, which would be in February, is that right, Renee?
Yep, February, March.
So we're suggesting 3 councillors to be involved in that, and would seek direction from the committee on that today.
Okay, thank you. Right, so questions? Oh, Councillor McPherson.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have an issue of process actually, which I want to ask about or raise here. Item 4 is headed executive summary, and almost all subsequent reports in this also have an executive summary of the same class. This is not an executive summary. This is a brief outline of the process followed. Executive summaries, my understanding, outline the issues and the directions that the report has gone in. You can get the details later. Apart from the item we've just done, which I think was more actually like an executive summary, none of these are executive summaries. I want to be able to go to an executive summary and say, get the guts of the issue, and then I can go to the details that I want. And you can't do that from this. It just says who did what when. It doesn't say what any outcomes were
Thank
at all.
you. Thank you very much.
It's
Yep,
sort of the format of the
raising that.
report issue.
Yeah. And we are doing, I know the organisation is doing a review on all of the reports, and I've noted that down. It's certainly feedback that I've had over time from others, and share your views on that. So thank you. Thank you very much. So questions? Any further questions?
Madam Chair, we were suggesting maybe councillors Tooman, Chesterman and Young to be on the hearings panel. I've had discussions with them on that.
Yep.
But obviously at the will of the committee, who you want to appoint to that hearings panel.
Is that because they're the oldest?
I move we add Councillor McPherson.
I think it's
Councillor
a good,
Young's older.
it's a good mix. So if there are no further questions, the recommendation on page 27, if those members are happy to be on the group, and Councillor Young has spoken to me, we'll change C, also just to clarify in line with one of the other hearings subcommittees we did for traffic, that so C changed to that the Strategy and Policy Committee appoint councillors Tooman, Chesterman and Young to a Hamilton Cemeteries Draft Management Plan Hearings Subcommittee. That's the same wording we used for the traffic one we did.
I'd call it a hearings panel because it's actually under the Reserves Act rather than...
Yep, okay, that's fine, panel, yep. And D, we like dates in here, so just add the end of that with a final plan for adoption by April 2015, and that aligns with the strategy and policy and councils as well. So with those changes, question, Councillor Forsyth?
Thank you. Just to the heritage cemeteries, east and west, does this mean, and I sort of couldn't find, I know it's only a sort of a high-level kind of plan, but when it comes down to the detail, does it mean that the Hamilton East Cemetery will be, I can't see the right words here, but preserved and maintained, promotes the identification, protection, preservation and conservation of the historic and cultural heritage of New Zealand? Does that mean including the actual plots themselves? Because I know there are people that have been buried there that don't have headstones, or they can't be, we don't actually know where they are, etc., etc. So does that mean that that kind of detail will be covered in the plan?
it won't go down to the minute detail around each plot or anything like that, but generally, yes, about, obviously the first thing is safety, so you're probably aware in a historic type of cemetery that headstones get old and some
Yes.
crumble and things like that,
Yeah.
so that's probably the first issue. And then probably just the look and the feel and maintaining it in the historic context that's there and in good condition as much as possible. We do rely on the families, although the trouble with historic cemeteries is that sometimes, if it's 4 generations ago, families have moved on and that sort of thing. So generally our staff will be looking after those areas as best they can within our resources.
But they still are active cemeteries, aren't they?
Yes, well, some of the plots have rights of other family members still to be buried there, but that's dwindling as time goes on.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Mallett?
Thanks, and it may be in the report, but I couldn't find it. But I'm going to talk a question about property rights. Who owns the cemetery and who owns the plot, and consequently who is responsible for maintaining it and managing it?
I'll defer to Michelle Rivers. Some of you may not know Michelle, she's our cemeteries manager. So, Michelle, do you want to pop up and answer that question, please?
So, council is responsible for maintaining the site. Families are responsible for the maintenance of the headstones.
Okay, so so you have some land, a couple of acres of land or something like that, and we own that land. We're the owner of the land, so we mow it and keep the hedges and maintain the buildings. But the plot itself, I don't 6 foot down and all that sort of carry on. That's who owns that? Does someone own it?
People have in its rights in perpetuity for the people that are buried there, but
Yep.
the council is responsible for overseeing the cemetery.
And that's funded. I know you do pay for
Yeah.
pay for that, but then obviously over time, as you talk about, headstones crumble and whatnot. So that is still the first port of call is the family or the estate, I assume, from what you've just said. But when the family or estate are no longer around or have crumbled or or moved on, that becomes the council's responsibility, which we then fund generally out of our rates, do we?
In reality, yes, but in theory, it's the family still. But in
So
reality,
it's supposed to be
Yeah.
the family, but that doesn't
in,
always
reali-
happen.
in reality, that we do have to look after some of those,
Yeah.
especially if they're unsafe.
Yep. Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you.
Right, any further questions? Right, so I'm happy to move. Can we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? No? All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, item 8, Hamilton City Library Strategic Plan on page 53. Hi, Sue. And Lance is staying in the hot seat.
It was good timing, wasn't it? We've been very efficient with
You
Sue
are,
speaking
you
and
are.
watching the live streaming and timing her run
Yes.
across Garden Place.
Excellent, excellent. And this is the final, apart from going to council, for complete sign-off, this is the final step in this process anyway for the plan. And then it goes into the LTP, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right, yep.
Yes.
So you can take the report as read. There is a handout, some of the images, the graphs on page 56 got cut off for some reason. Oh, and we've got a hard copy as well. Very nice.
Oh, thank you.
Right, so
Is this just what's in
any
our-
questions?
Is
Yes,
this just what's in here?
yes.
Right.
Any
So-
questions?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to
Yep.
highlight probably what's in the
Sure.
report, and Councillor King, who led the process for the working group. Quite a bit of effort gone into this, a lot of information been put forward. We've had outside stakeholders involved in the development of this. And I think we've got to a good space where there's a number of actions which, there's more work to be done. You can read from the strategic actions, which, obviously would get reported back to council in due course as we work through those. I'm not sure if Councillor King wants to say any more, but from my perspective, like other working groups, it actually worked really well having not only council people, but people from outside and some of our stakeholders too, to get all those views to put this together.
Thank you. Thank you. Sue, is there anything you wanted? You've been involved from beginning to end?
Yes, no, I would just echo Lance's comments. Thank you.
Great. Right, do we have any questions on the report? Councillor Mallett.
Where are the dollars?
I think you'll see from the actions, we still need to work.
So on that fold out actions?
Yeah. When you get to the, just trying to find the right page. The work stream projects, and which have come from the diagram, the sort of diagram here. That one there.
That one there.
So there's
That's
and
the far right.
Pages further on, there's actually the strategic work stream projects. Obviously, we need to work through that, and we need to come back to council with really, like, say, developing a facilities plan, and there's some key priorities in there around the central library being the destination library of our library service. We need to come back with that work. We've put quite a bit of effort into that, but there's still some further refinement to be done. Whether that's really in time for the LTP, I think it's going to take a bit longer. There's quite a bit of thought needed on this, so we'll be working through that. And you see the timeframes, that to be completed by July 2015, and then the review and update the digital plan, which is a key plank as well, as to be done by October 2015. So there will be further report backs to council on how we would roll out this plan and how it would be funded. So we're working through that.
Councillor Forsyth.
Just for clarification then, you're asking us to sign off a plan without any funding detail behind it?
Essentially, yes, but obviously this plan's been developed cognizant of council's financial situation, and then really when we report back, there's some immediate actions, and then there's longer term actions, and that's at the discretion of council around funding, and there's options around that, so we need to explore those options. And one of the things in here is about efficiencies, and also is also looking at alternative sources of revenue as well. So that's another action that's in there.
Councillor Mallett.
Yeah, just going through the actions, I just noticed there's no talk of building new libraries. I haven't overlooked that, have I?
No, and I think that's part of that facilities plan about really what this provides is the direction of the form and the function of a modern library, but then how you actually roll that out is another piece of work. That's that facilities plan, and that needs some further work before we bring that back to council. And there'll be options around that too, which will include the funding for that, which will obviously be council's decision around that.
It's all sort of Brave New World stuff, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's all Brave New World stuff, isn't it?
I think it's a mixture of what we know now and the things that are working now, plus also is actually looking forward to what does a modern library look like in 10 years' time, because as we discussed during the working group, and you were there, Gary, that, with the advent of e-books and technology and people wanting community hubs and that sort of thing, the form and function of a library is changing over time, as councillors have seen from some of the statistics we've shown over the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, my question is very similar to Councillor Forsyth's, and I'm just trying to get my head around where did it come from that it's okay for these types of plans to come this far without us having a really good idea as to the financial consequences. But because I'm in a real quandary, because I love the library. I love what the library aspires to do, and for a number of reasons. But I'm not going to support this, and nor am I going to support anything from now on that comes to us without some clear financial consequence. So I want to understand, where did the theory come from that this was an okay process? Please tell me I didn't sign off on it somewhere.
I think you may well have through, we've had a work program around looking at, some of our strategic assets. We've had the Hamilton Gardens strategic plan, etc. So there has been discussion around the council table and a working group appointed through resolution of council.
I follow all of that, the working group, but that's not answering my question in terms of the fact that it didn't require an indication of the financial consequences. I'm not questioning the robustness of the process or the detail or the accuracy. My question is, I'm about to sign off on a plan that will have financial consequences. I don't know what they are.
I think the next stage that will come forward is what is the timing and the costs of that.
But my problem with that theory is I would have then signed off in principle on a plan. And I know how councils work. Once the plan starts, it's like the trains leaving the station. And then suddenly it's much harder, and including the fact that we have to then deal with expectations and the public's perception, if suddenly we find, when it comes to the financial part, actually, all of these wonderful plans that we've signed off on principle, we can't actually do them. So one of them's going to have to drop off. Surely we should be having that discussion every time you come to us with a plan. Maybe the CFO or the chief executive can...
If I can just offer a comment, and then we'll go to the GM for a comment or the CE for a comment. This is a strategic plan document. I know exactly what you're saying, Councillor Wilson, but it is a strategic plan document. And in the only difference between this and my experience here as a strategic plan document and other strategic documents is this has more detail. So it gives you more of an idea of some of the projects and the goals and the measurables that have been missing over the years, in my view, of other strategic plans that have come to council where we've had far less detail. As far as budget and how much or little of the plan we're going to be able to achieve, that's a long-term plan decision because that's our budget. That's our budget exercise, isn't it? So I don't know whether any of those comments actually help you, but there's mine for 2 cents.
I hear your point, and I guess from a layperson's response, I don't know any couple who would sit down and start designing the kitchen or a new bathroom or any of those sorts of things without having a general understanding as to what their budget permitted and what the budget was going to be. But I take on board your comments.
Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, my question follows on from Councillor Wilson and Councillor Forsyth, Madam Chair, and it really is around, I suppose, the anticipation in this report, which gives some exciting developments for the library going forward. I guess in the context of doing this, I mean, is it possible, and a question perhaps that I could ask, is it possible to implement the strategy without there being a substantial increase in the ratepayer funding for this? Because as I see when I read the report attached here, a lot of the exciting new developments are really changing the structure of the way that the library's operated in the past because the demands and the needs are changing. So, when I read into this and perhaps considered whether there were significant financial implications, my immediate question is, well, we may be able to deliver a significant portion of this within the existing funding framework without it necessarily being an add-on.
And you're right, Councillor Pascoe, and I think just as Councillor King outlined to me, which I was going to point out, it talks about maximising efficiency and effectiveness of our libraries within the existing resources. So there is a rider in here, and that sets a challenge for management to actually look at actually delivering on this within the resources we've got and doing things differently. So, Sue and I have a lot of discussions about how we operate the libraries going forward. And, and one example is with more e-books and things like that is then what is the traffic in our libraries going to be, and what size of library do you need, how many staff do you need, the use of technology, as by implementing that technology as their offset against, what's your highest overhead, which is, a whole bunch of things, including staff. So it's about efficiency and effectiveness and doing things within existing resources, but also leveraging as well as partnerships as well, which we've discussed. We have a bunch of other partners. A good example is the APNK network, where we have the internet provision, which is through government funding, and there's different potential there. I don't want to set too high expectations, but I think it's about setting those challenges, about thinking differently and doing things differently within existing resources.
Thank you. Councillor King, question?
Lance has covered it, Councillor Lance.
Councillor Mallett?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Councillor Wilson was saying, that we are starting to do this more and more. I don't know if it happened lots previously, but and that, 3 examples. This library plan doesn't have any funding package or plan with it. The Cycleway, which Councillor Wilson spoke about earlier, and of course the Big Daddy's the River Plan, which was where you all approved. And we do need to be careful with these visionary type things, particularly when there's no, when they're very abstract and conceptual. I mean, at least the libraries at least we seem to be working within a financial envelope, which is the existing funding. So we are running the risk of raising community expectations significantly without really having the wherewithal to deliver. So we just need to be careful on that.
So we are still in questions. Councillor Forsyth, you had a question?
Oh, I was just going to indicate that I'd like to move the recommendations when we're ready.
Okay, yep. So any questions, Councillor McPherson?
It's just a minor one, but it's about presentation. I take it that this document is planned to be a public document. Go out and be stacks them in the library and that sort of thing. And looking at the graphics there, it gives a wrong picture about changes in usage of library. And the example, and there's 3 or 4 of them, page 70 or page 13 in the report, or workstream projects, there's some stick figures down the bottom. And the 2008 one is about a third the size of the 2012 one. It purports to show at first glance to any member of the public, it looks like about a 3 times increase in figures. There's actually only a 12% increase. Whoever drew up these stats, and it's probably the people, the people who do the layout and that design, haven't a clue how to accurately depict figures, and it's just, that's not the picture. That's an incorrect view, and the same goes for the page before and the page before that too. So I just think, we shouldn't overstate cases. Anyone glancing at that could easily be led to think there's this huge increase in usage and we've got to provide extra for it. Well, that's not actually the case.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McPherson. So we've got a mover from Councillor Forsyth, seconded by Councillor King. So we'll go to debate. Councillor Forsyth, did you want to speak first as the mover?
Yes, I would like to speak. Just wanted to make it clear that I haven't been a member of the working group, but I did want to congratulate the group for putting together such a plan, such a strategic and visionary plan, and I think that's one of the key elements for me. And I know that there has been considerable stakeholder consultation, stakeholder work, that the draft document has been out to the public, and the public has had their opportunity for input as well. So yeah, I think the process has been really thorough. I think we can all agree on that, and that this is what the final result. And look, I just would like to come back to Councillor Wilson's a comparison with if we were sitting around as a family trying to detail what perhaps we would like to do in the kitchen, and we would put a budget together, etc., etc. I mean, I get that, but I think in my mind anyway, before you even get to that point, you have a little dream and you have a little vision about what it is that the end product might be. And I see this type of plan as being the starting point. The detail around the actual stove that you want and the look and feel of the kitchen, etc., that comes a little bit further down the track. So there is absolutely a place for this type of plan. Lance also talked about the power of a document like this and the potential for us to leverage other income sources, other funding. That's really another important part of something like this, that it gives us some weight as a council, it gives us some clear direction, it describes where we're heading and how we would like to look with the backing of the community, and I think that's another really plus for moving forward with something like this. I think it's also really innovative, having a strategic, and I think we need to look at the numbers here. It's 2015 to 2025. These projects aren't planned for the next year or two. This is really looking far out into the future, trying to imagine what the world will look like in 30 years' time, and I think that's a skill that we need to have as a governing body as well. It's not just about today, it's also about the future. So when it comes down to that detail, yes, our opportunity to debate and discuss how the projects and the visionary projects will be funded will come down to 10-year planning, annual planning, existing budgets, external funding, etc., etc. So that is yet to come, but this is definitely the strategic starting place.
Thank you. I've got you down, Councillor Miller. Councillor King?
Yes, I was chair of this committee, and I'd again like to thank the elected members who are on the committee, the staff who put a lot of work in, and outside library experts and people from the community who came in and put in their input into this report. As Councillor Forsyth has said, this is a long-term view of where we're heading. You couldn't put a budget around what's going to happen up until 2018. It's a long way away. But there is the clause there on page 8 which says maximise the efficiency and effectiveness of library operations within existing resources. So if you have concerns about the costs, you just need to refer back to that which is in this document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett?
Thank you. And just a reminder of everyone around the table that we still have an overarching financial strategy, which is that we keep debt below 400 million. We deliver rate increases of 3.8%, which I emphasise I think is still too much per annum, but we are still constricted within that, and I think we've all bought into that, within that formulation. So what happens if something like this gets thrown into the mix? I guess we either prioritise this or we don't prioritise it, because we've got, you know, as Her Worship tells us, a tsunami of stuff coming down regarding growth. We've got cycleway plans, we've got river plans, library plans. So it's just a matter of us saying, okay, these are all the nice to haves, then when push comes to shove, we're going to have to do some very heavy prioritisation, sticking within our 3.8%, which I think, as I said again, I think is too much, 3% annual rate increases.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, look, I've listened to the debate, and I think I agree with both, with all the speakers, in the sense that my first reaction to say that I won't support it may have been a little premature. On the basis that I have no doubt that the document was well put together. I have no doubt that the experts we called upon have done their work, and that the visionary document, or the dream document as Margaret articulates it, is sound. So I'm happy to support it and throw it in the pot with all the other wonderful strategic visionary documents that we have. But similar to Councillor Mallett, there will come a day not too far away where we have to put together the budget. And unlike Councillor Mallett, I support 3.8%. I think it is fair. But I have a funny feeling, just from experience, that when we put all of these visionary documents together, there ain't going to be enough, and something's going to have to drop out. And then we're going to have to deal with the expectation and public perception of the things that we had said. And I think this is the most important part. And I think we have to make sure that in our calculations we put a huge amount of value or quantum aside for the unknown, and that we make sure we have a whole lot of headroom. Because I would hate to think that we spend the 10-year budget and then suddenly find inevitably in local government some crisis comes along and we find ourselves way out of kilter. The final point is I disagree with Councillor King's, and I don't think maybe I misunderstood, but I think it is appropriate to have a 10-year budget. I think it is appropriate that you project pretty accurately how you're going to spend the money over the next 10 years. Companies do it all the time. Certainly companies or entities that are involved in large capital expenditure will be looking out 10, 15, 20 years in terms of their budget. So I think my concern still remains that these projects come up without any financial implication, but I accept we're approving it based on something we'd like to do, and we'll have the real debate whether we can afford it at a later stage, and I can live with that.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Your Worship.
Look, councillors, one of the really important roles that we have is to ensure that we provide clarity about direction of travel for the city. And we're really lucky in Hamilton because our future's looking pretty good. One of the things that I know in the short time I've been here is there hasn't been, in my view, clarity of direction of travel that well. And we manage a huge number of assets for the city, and it's very, very important that as a governing body we set a strategic direction, first and foremost, and secondly, within that, we give clarity to the staff about what we think are the important things for the city. And that's a critical role that we play. And that's about plans and policies and other things, and we're looking at some of them in this report today. One of the other things that's really important when you develop plans is that you do them cognizant of the environment that you work in and the future, what the future's going to look like. So that's why we spend an awful lot of time when we're doing these plans and policies understanding what the future's going to look like through assumptions and modelling. And when we look at the libraries, one of the things that was really important in this was to look at what's happening in libraries, because they're changing rapidly. And if we did not have a plan, we would sit here year in and year out doing the same thing. And that is not what we are about, because that costs money, it's inefficient, and it does nothing for the benefit of our community. So plans are about those things, and this is a very good plan. So as I said, we are cognizant of the environment in which we operate in, and I haven't seen anything come to this council that isn't cognizant about that, and that's important. What the staff now go away and do with that clarity and cognizant of the environment that we work in, they come back and tell us how they will implement these things over what time frame within the financial parameters that we set. And we do that, I think, very well. And I don't think there would be a person in this city that isn't absolutely clear what our financial parameters are.
So it's absolutely appropriate to do this, without doubt. And as some councillors have said, when the staff come forward, having driven efficiencies in their area of work to deliver on our priorities for the city, we will decide as a governing body where the priorities lie in an ascending order. And as we all know, currently and always, those priorities start with infrastructure and funding the future growth of the city. And I don't think anyone around this table has any doubt about that. And then we will prioritise other things. And I think the staff are really cognisant of that. Really cognisant of that, actually. Lance, in particular, your team is, because you're often the area where we put the most scrutiny on, actually. So I think you well and truly know what you can put in front of us and what you can't. So thanks, Councillor King and all those on the group, and I want to also commend Councillor Mallett's contribution to that libraries group, because Gary asked the tough questions as we would expect him to do, and I think the working group's done a really good job of delivering this plan. And I'm looking forward to stage 2, because it'll be a sharpened pencil and a future where actually, you know, we will be meeting the future needs of our library people. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any further speakers on this item? No? Right, moved by Councillor Forsyth, seconded by Councillor King. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Right, item 9, page 73, another plan,
But it's about dogs.
but it's about dogs. We've got Renee and Liz. Welcome, welcome.
So cute as
This plan very dear to my heart, I've got to say. Right, you can take the report as read, and committee members, you have got a small booklet of the plan being handed out as well. So,
So, Chair, I just wanted to know whose dog is on the front cover.
yeah,
It's awfully
interesting,
cute.
eh?
Very cute.
Very cute.
Yes.
Don't know.
Don't get
What
saved
breed
by
is that?
It's a lab.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lab.
So questions, Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, and
Lab?
compliments for the graphics on this one,
Yeah.
including the dog, not just the dog. But I actually had in relation to the map, which in my report's on page 81, saying where the current and future of dog area is going to be, those little coloured paws all over the place. I wanted to know whether it was true that we had 3 times as many dogs on the west as the east. And the reason I'm asking that question, when you look at the exercise areas, I can understand a little bit of a difference, but literally 3 times as many on the west as the east. I didn't know we had that many dogs on our side of the river. And given that the population is slightly heavier on the other side, I sort of expect dog numbers will follow people numbers. So it seems the east is a bit light. In terms of local areas, I actually didn't understand where. I'm not trying to joke there. It doesn't seem quite right in terms of where we're heading.
Yep, through the chair. So there are around 12,000 registered dogs in Hamilton City. I don't know the exact figure, which is split between the east and the west, but there is actually one park, so Tamanatu Park, which was identified as a temporary dog exercise area, is missing off that plan, so that's something that we need to get updated. So there is one more on the east side of the river. As part of the initial survey we did, which we had over 1,100 respondents to, we asked if they felt, identified on a plan where those people lived and if they had an exercise area close to them, and so we took that into consideration as we went through all of our parks and identified where they were going to be to try and fill those gaps.
I'm just wondering about whether that's, I mean, sure, we've responded to submissions or, the survey and that, but, I mean, when you look at the Rototuna area, that does seem light. There are a lot of dogs around there. I don't know the details. I'm not trying to second guess your answers, but I would have thought we plan playgrounds in a different way. We don't just take responses from people. We say where, the future suburb's going to be and where should we do it a bit more demographically, a bit more scientifically. I have no problems with the concepts behind this. I'm just not sure that the results are going to be quite right.
So we did look at the numbers. Unfortunately, we don't have Suzanne here who can talk to the numbers because they manage how many dogs we have. But we did actually map out in the working group all the numbers of dogs across the city, where they all fell and where the gaps were. And then we also looked at the survey results as well, and the people who were saying, the majority of the people who were saying, I can't get to a dog park because there's not one yet, were on the west side of the city.
Okay. I think we're going to face pressure to fill in some of those gaps in future. But,
and this does go out for...
I'm not going to make any more of
it's
an
a
issue,
good
but-
point, and it might come out of that. Councillor Mallett?
Just wondering what the, because I live on a dog park, and there's a car park.
Do you? Tell us more about
Hence
that,
the
Gareth.
smell. So a lot of people drive to our the car park beside our car park. And is there a reticence to drive there? There is. People want to just walk.
Yes, so through the survey, majority of people said they were happy to drive to a dog park and they would drive for up to 15 minutes to get to the right
Yeah,
dog
which
park.
seems logical. Yeah, like as we have with destination parks for, because obviously if you have parks all over the place, it's going to cost heaps. You have a couple of big ones with ample car parking, you can look after a lot of people. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So there wasn't reticence then to jump into a car and take the dog, yeah?
No, people were happy to drive.
Yeah.
Happy to drive.
Any further questions? No further questions, so I'm going to move this one.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and I just want to say a couple of words. A thank you to all the members of the working group and Councillor Tooman for doing an exceptional job at chairing that working group. And also to the external members. I think through, and Your Worship, you touched on it as well, through these plans, the value of external members is huge, and I want to thank their time. They impart their time for free, and I want to thank those people, and also to staff. You've done a wonderful job, and thank you for those wonderful cookies, dog-shaped biscuits that we had as well, that you brought in for us. It was a good process, and look, this has been 7 years in the making for me personally, and we do have 12,000 dogs in the city, and when you extrapolate that out to people in the house, if you took 2 people as an average, that's a lot of people that are contacted and have contact with their pets, and treat those pets as family members. So I think it's a good plan. All right, so moved and seconded. Any further speakers?
Can I just ask what
Your
date
Worship.
is that bylaw coming back?
Oh, sorry, I did have that on my list here. February 2015, so that date needs to be added back to the February 2015 Strategy and Policy Committee.
Thank you.
So all those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, item number 10, page 89. All right, welcome. Hi, Calvin. Now, Calvin, you may not have met all of the elected members. Calvin's our new City Safe Manager, so do you just want to introduce yourself and give us a bit of a background?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your Worship, councillors. Earlier this year I retired after 34 years in New Zealand Police, the last 6 of which I was the Centre Manager for the Police Communications 111 Command and Control Centre in Auckland, which is the largest of our command centres in the country. As part of that, I spent 12 months acting in various roles at Police National Headquarters, as variously as the National operations manager and as the national manager of the communication centres. Prior to that, I had 6 years as the district commander based in Waikato and looking after Waikato, and prior to that I was the area commander looking after the western side of the Waikato district. And I've pretty much served over pretty much the upper North Island over my career. So I've been with council now for 7 weeks.
Great, thanks Calvin. It's great to have you on board. So you'll be sitting in that hot seat for the next 2 reports. Okay, so we'll take this report as read, the Safety in Public Places Bylaw Adoption Report, and we'll go to questions. Oh yes, sorry, and I noticed in the report that a couple of the track changes weren't quite highlighted. So, and they're not actually in yellow on this piece of paper either. But they are either underlined on this new piece of paper or you see a grey highlight. So those are the only changes.
So just to be clear, the bylaw as included in the report is correct. What has been tabled here has some shading to show words that should have been identified as a change that weren't identified as a change. So as presented is correct, it's just highlighted changes.
Councillor Mallet.
Thanks. Just to be clear with what you said then, Angela, the draft bylaw went out and people came and talked to us about it and whatnot, and we
Last
had
week,
hearings.
yep.
And the changes to the draft bylaw are only the things we see here, though. So that's subject to all of the consultation. This is the changes we've made. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, the version that's included in your agenda reflects all those changes. The chair, through her review process, just picked up that there were a couple of words, or 6 words or 7 words, that there should have been an underline to show they had been changed. Where those are those ones that are highlighted there.
Thank you.
Which is under nuisance behaviour F, and it's of a reasonable person in the circumstances in which it occurs. There was no yellow highlight in the agenda. And we like track changes, so that was the reason for that. Councillor McPherson.
Yes, I had a question, an explanation actually I want about the removal of the term a police officer under the authorised officer definition, about the impact of that. Would that mean, because I see it's as a result of the police submission, would that mean that police can't enforce our bylaw in this area, this particular bylaw? Is that the import of it?
So the police wouldn't directly enforce the bylaw, but the police are willing to support our staff in the enforcement of the bylaw within their current role. So whatever they do is their job at the moment, they're still willing to support the bylaw in that way, but not as enforcement officers of the bylaw.
So with other bylaws, and I'm thinking of the windscreen washers one, the police currently have the power to enforce that one.
So that's specifically under the Land Transport Act, and they and that's their role under the Land Transport Act. The sections, so the windscreen washing is directly under Section 22 AB, and that specifically is for the police to enforce rather than for our staff to enforce.
So the police have a role in quite an overlapping role, have they not, in the area of behaviour in public? They've got all sorts of laws that they can that they're required, in fact, to enforce in this related area. So I see everyone nodding for that. So I can't understand why our staff would be saying it's a good idea for them not to be listed as potential enforcers. I'm not saying they should be doing it instead of our people, but surely they're as well as.
The GM will answer.
So I think there has been some discussions at a very high level with the police. Bylaws across the country, the police are not normally named as an enforcement officer in bylaws, and our bylaws have been unusual, and so we've been approached by the senior command to progressively, as bylaws come up to be reviewed, to have them removed specifically from the bylaws. As you say, they have their own various laws that they can utilise to act and enforce various matters, and it is their approach that they don't wish to be named in bylaws, and that is the approach that most councils have reflected, and our bylaws have just been out of step with that process.
Okay, well, it might be their approach that they don't want to be listed, but I would have thought that was something that should come back to us, because I know part of the discussion when we had the hearings on this was that at least some of us felt that the police should have a greater role in this area, and perhaps an alternative role to the bylaw. I'm not saying that was the majority view, we didn't have a vote on that, but I'm surprised that staff have recommended the removal when, you know, it's clearly been a point of contention around this council table for a long time about how much work the police do or are able to do or are asked to do in this space.
So the police have cited their own legal advice as one of the reasons why we shouldn't be naming them. And I guess the City Safe Manager may wish to talk to your other point, but as I say, we are responding to a request that they have been taking with all councils across the country that they are not named in their bylaws. And that the view they've shared with us is they don't believe that there's any impediment to their ability to support us with the various initiatives that you're referring to. And maybe Calvin wishes to talk to that.
Yeah, support is different. That sounds like a Clayton's situation. I think it's pretty clear that people would like the police to be able to enforce the bylaw should they be the nearest officers to hand.
Calvin, do you want to address Councillor McPherson's question?
I can attempt to. I'm not sure. I certainly can't speak on behalf of police, obviously, and the GM has obviously indicated the advice that has come from police and their rationale for that. That being the case, in terms of the enforcement of our bylaw, I don't see that as being any impediment at all in how that is enforced. And so in terms of the level of support which can be brought to bear in assistance to our staff to enforce that bylaw.
Yeah, that's presuming that our staff, and we've got a very small group of staff in this area, are the ones at hand calling for assistance. And a hypothetical question, what if a police officer comes across someone breaking the bylaw? Unless there's what it seems to me, from your answer just now and from the wording of this, that unless one of our staff, our warranted staff, is at hand, the police can't do anything about it if they're not also breaking some law. If they're only breaking a bylaw and they're not infringing some other law, the police can't actually do anything unless our staff are there. So I don't like where that's heading.
In my view, that would not preclude the police from stopping and speaking to anyone and asking anyone to desist from behaviour which is outside the accepted norms, regardless of whether it fits within or outside the bylaw. And police stop and regularly speak to people for a whole host of reasons and engage in conversation with them on things that may well be considered by some people to be better suited to being bylaws, but are not.
So they can do the slap over the hand with the wet noodle thing, but not, they can't, if someone's grossly offending a bylaw, offending the public, breaking the bylaw, they can't do anything other than talk to them, unless one of our officers is present.
Oh, I think I'm not speaking on behalf of the police, but it would depend on the nature of what the behaviour was, and you'll find that may transgress into another crime type, which would certainly bring it within the powers of the police to, in fact, take a very strong line on them.
Okay.
So all of that being the case, I can't understand why we're changing it anyway.
Okay.
We're not requiring them to do something, we want the option, some of us.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Wilson, question?
Yeah, look, my question is simply this. How many times could you refer to a situation where the police have, when dealing with people in the city, said, actually, that's in violation of the city's liquor bylaw? And am I correct in saying that, in fact, like all the other bylaws, police aren't specifically referred to as an enforcement officer in that capacity, or are they?
Under the Liquor Control Act, they are specifically. So there are a number of bylaws, aside from what the police are requesting or other bylaws, there are a number of bylaws such as the speed limit, the traffic bylaw, liquor control, dog control, where the police have a role.
Right.
Under the other legislation. And they're talking about bylaws that specifically sit directly under the Local Government Act rather than jointly between the Local Government Act and other legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, there being no questions, do I have a mover for the report? Recommendation is on page 89. We're just going to go to the GM before we do that. We're gonna put it on
Councillors,
the board.
just as a final layer of assurance, we've had the City Solicitor provide an assurance to the Chair and myself in terms of the final content of the bylaw following the submission process. And the City Solicitor is recommending one further minor change to the bylaw, which is identified on the screen there. In particular, it's the addition of the word reasonable. Unfortunately, it's not highlighted on the screen there, but there it is there. So it's the addition of that particular word to the definition of nuisance behaviour, and that is based on their final legal review, and it's consistent with other parts of the definition section of the bylaw. And so their advice to myself and the Chair is that the bylaw does, as presented to committee here, meet the requirements of the law and the Bill of Rights, with the addition of that one word.
Angela?
Sorry,
thanks,
Councillor
Claire.
Millett. Yeah.
So what the amendment, the recommendation that's in the in our agendas, page 89 through, so paragraph
Yep.
6 right through to C, is going to have that put into it, is it?
That's correct. So that's the only
Just
change.
that bit that's in red.
Correct. And the only change that results in is one additional word being added into the bylaw, and that has been added into the definition of nuisance behaviour, which is on page 2 of the bylaw, part A, and it's the word reasonable before the word person.
Okay. So this one-page handout thing,
It does not include that extra word.
beg your pardon?
Does not include that word.
So this will be the bylaw.
With that one word
Where,
change.
and where will that go in here?
It will go into nuisance behaviour, which is on page 2, and it's section A.
So it's A, B, C, D.
Yeah, so it's with an A. And so you can see the word in A there, which starts begging in a public place.
Oh, I got you. Yep. Sorry. Yep. Begging says.
And so the only word is the word that's been, is the word reasonable. which
Okay.
is added.
Yep. So that is actually an adjustment to this.
Of
That is
any
correct.
reasonable
Okay.
person, yeah. Councillor McPherson?
Yes, sorry, has the resolution been moved yet? Because I wish to move an amendment, but I'll wait until, I'm not
No,
sure.
we've
Okay.
just put this one up on the board that I'm going to move, or that I'm moving, if I have a seconder.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Wilson, so you have an amendment, Councillor
If
McPherson?
there's a second, I'd like to move a resolution to delete Roman numeral 6, which you can see on the screen. It's in 6 part B, Roman numeral 6,
Police officer, yeah.
that one there.
So your amendment is as is up there?
Yep.
Minus that one?
Yes.
Okay, and is there a seconder for that amendment? If there's no seconder, then the amendment fails. No, there's no seconder, Councillor McPherson.
That's fine, I'll just speak against the resolution.
All right, so change that back. Right, so that's been moved and seconded. Any debate? Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, thanks. I think with this bylaw, we're using a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. We're not following the appropriate response to an issue in the community in the first instance. I listened to the submissions last week, and I had a worry about it beforehand. I was more convinced after hearing the submissions that there were enough, more than enough powers, both to our staff and to the police and other agencies, presumably as well, to deal with problem behaviours in the community. I think that we're failing to put the hard word on the police force in Hamilton to have a greater presence in problem areas such as the CBD. I think if we had more beat police, as they are called, cruising around on foot not on vehicles, well, that too perhaps, but certainly on foot around the problem areas, I think, and having quiet words, as we were just told, to the people that may be heading down that direction of being acting with problem behaviours, then we could move people, they could move people on, shift them around, stop them congregating, all with the existing laws, bylaws and so forth that we have in place. I think to go down this extra track is unnecessary. I think it's going to lead to extra expense for us. I think it abrogates police responsibility in this area and takes it on and gives it to ratepayers to deal with, even more than we're having to deal with it at the moment. Police, as is fairly well known, I would say, have actually withdrawn resources from the community sphere in several iterations over recent years. No matter what they claim, it's clear it's not as much of a priority as some of us, most of us perhaps, would like. I believe that if we were talking to them at a leadership level in our area and saying we expect more of you in terms of a public presence in areas like the CBD, that we would get a better result and not need to use these sorts of sledgehammers to crack the walnuts that problem behaviour is. Every city in New Zealand, perhaps every city in the world, has got homeless issues, behaviour issues. It doesn't mean to say that we have to have our own police force to deal with them. I am not opposed to the level of work that we do in that area at the moment. I'm opposed to anything that's going to lead to an increase in that when we haven't properly explored what the police should be doing in that area. And that's why I took particular exception to the removal of police as being enabled to enforce our bylaw. We're clearly saying, don't you worry about that area, police. That's our job. And we'll do that. I think this is the wrong direction and it's going to cost us more.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Any further speakers? Your Worship?
One of the very good things about developing a safety plan has been that for the first time the city has had a comprehensive approach to safety, and that's included all of the elements that go into that. The police were an integral part of developing that safety plan, and I have to say that they have been a really great partner over the last 6 to 8 months as these things have been developed up. One of the other things I would say, just in response to Councillor McPherson, I'm not sure if you are aware, and I sense probably not, that since the new regional commander has come, the police presence in the CBD has tripled. They have taken a completely different approach to being on the ground and on the beat in the CBD that is identified as one of their hotspot areas. And the resources that we now receive in the CBD on the ground is greater than we have had, I think it'd be a decade. So, and part of that has come about because of the development of a plan that sets a direction of travel and goals. And so I just wanted to make sure, because I'm not sure if Councillor McPherson was aware of that. The other point I'd like to make about this particular bylaw is one of the really important things about the safety plan is that it covers all the different elements, because it's a matrix, right? And this is an integral part of that matrix. My wish, personal wish, is that we don't actually have to enforce the bylaw, because that would be a last resort. And I'm hoping that all the other elements that go into safety in our community, you know, all of those things work as well. But it's very important that we have all of them, because quite frankly, it's evident in the past decade that we've had bits of, but not a cohesive and comprehensive approach. So I want to also acknowledge, Kelvin, the work that you've been doing since you've come on board in response to this, and also the work that the partners have done in developing that plan and this bylaw, because once again, we have gone to the community and had people giving their time to participate in developing up really, really good plans for the city, and I think we should be really thankful for that. So I'm interested to see how this bylaw rolls out and is enforced. I think we had some good submissions, Chair, and we did hear some sad and distressing stories as well. We've got to take a leadership role and ensuring our community is safe, and I think this is exactly what we're doing.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Tooman.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll be speaking, wish to support the motion. There are a number of ways in which, of course, police can assist, and it's not necessary through the bylaw, such things as disorderly behaviour, and a lot of these things actually cover a multitude of sins out there. If we look as to the next item on the agenda, which will be the next item, when you look at the enforcement options, and I think really that is the key to this bylaw, is to the way it is enforced. It's really a matter of looking at the intelligence, and I noticed in part of that, of course, one of the recommendations is, of course, is that Hamilton City Council, of course, work closely with the intel section of the Hamilton Police, so that those resources can actually be targeted to the at-risk areas within the city. And I think once we move on to the next item, and I think a lot of this will actually be self-explanatory, and the bylaw itself doesn't actually state the method of enforcement from there on. But as the Worship says, if we can right the wrong, what I say, right the wrong, without actually having to go down the line of prosecution and these type of things, of course, and use what I call a compliance policy, and if we can get that compliance off the ground, of course, then we've got to be on a winner.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers? Councillor Forsyth.
Very quickly, I'll be supporting the motion as well, and not I entirely agree with Councillor Tooman. And I just think on a sort of day-to-day level as well, it's just better use of resources, and we have had a great relationship with police in formulating the plan and talking about sharing resources and sharing information and working together. So it really is a collaborative kind of approach. And I just was thinking too, I think that members of the public would prefer to be treated initially by a appropriately trained and engaged council staff member rather than a police officer. And just from that initial point of contact, you know, and to use your phrase as well, Councillor McPherson, I don't think you really want to go in there and crack a walnut with a sledgehammer. I think if a situation can be dealt with, as I said, by an appropriately trained council officer, I think that's the first, that initial contact is going to be better than going in with the police situation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Right. We have a mover and seconder, and all those in favour? Any against? Councillor McPherson is against. Thank you, that's carried. We'll break till 3:15. Right, welcome back everybody. Right, now just before we move on, I did indicate that a minor item was going to be put onto the agenda after afternoon tea, and that is a letter received from the fire service. Now, I'm going to just move that be tabled and move on from there, and if I have a seconder for that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and that's purely that the letter be tabled. Questions? Councillor Mallett?
What does tabled mean? Is that like the report being received,
So,
is it?
it's received for information, it's tabled.
Oh,
yeah. Councillor Gallagher, welcome.
Sorry, I've just arrived
Yes.
in the meeting. I apologise for that, but the content, could you just explain where there's a follow-up here? Because obviously it is containing some serious content. So just it's the process. All I'm asking for at this point is the process.
Yes, thank you. And the Democracy Manager can answer that question. And you can come and go in the chamber. Also, welcome to our online viewers as well. We got feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies for the sound system. Councillor Gallagher, are you asking about meeting process for this being tabled?
It's been tabled.
Yes.
And that's a request, all right?
Yes.
So I'm not necessarily wanting to enter the debate, and I realise that there's issues, of course, of natural justice. I respect that. But I just want to have an explanation from the Blair or someone as to how, this is from the New Zealand Fire Service. So this goes beyond an individual, this is from the New Zealand Fire Service to the council. And all I want to know is what is the process to resolve the contents therein?
You will see from the letter that the Fire Service's request is really that their position be made public, and I guess by receiving this report in a public meeting and making that available as part of the record of the agenda, that meets their request, which is really that they would like their perspective publicly recorded, I guess in response to the matters that were received at this committee through the public forum at last meeting. So from my perspective, through receiving this letter and making it a public record, that addresses the issues that they would like addressed.
And by receiving it, then we've committed this into our record.
Yes, you
and so that's all that's required.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Could I speak?
Just hang on a minute, please. Any questions? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. So, Councillor King, you want to speak on the item?
I don't believe this is a minor matter, and that's the clause that has been used to introduce this. The minutes have closed and been first and seconded. It doesn't say that anywhere in the agenda matters arising from the minutes. This was introduced to Her Worship the Mayor and the CE. It was put in front of me while I was sitting in the meeting, while the meeting was already underway. I believe I was ambushed, and I believe that this could have happened to any of you, and I don't think it was correct procedure. It should have been included in the agenda when the agenda was circulated, if it was available at that time, and I believe it was. A reply to this letter, or a very similar letter to this, was circulated to all elected members 2 weeks ago. If this letter was put out, I should have been given the opportunity to put the reply in that was circulated only to elected members 2 weeks ago. I haven't had that opportunity. I'm very disappointed in this process. I don't believe it's been done properly, and I believe I've been ambushed.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Madam Chair, I support the issue being tabled, and although I can understand Councillor King's concerns, he has made an assertion that he feels that he was ambushed and that this being presented in the way that it was absolutely unbecoming. And I
didn't say unbecoming.
Sorry, what word did you use?
I said I felt that I had been ambushed because the document had been circulated.
Okay, so clarity on the word was ambushed, yeah.
Without any warning.
Right.
It should have been put out with the agenda.
Thank you.
My point is, you were quite happy to participate in the same type of process when you ambushed me a year ago on a committee issue. So my point is, remember you supported the removal of me from a committee that you were well aware of the day before, and no document was provided in advance. My point is this.
Okay, yeah.
There is an issue of consistency, Councillor King.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Look, actually, I'm just going to quickly go to the CE, who gave the chair of this committee, me, the advice to table this letter. So, CE, could you just offer some comment, please?
It was following discussion with the democracy manager in terms of the process, and it was that if the chair at her discretion wished to table the report, she was able to do so. We discussed whether or not it should be included in the chairperson's report, and tabled with effectively just in record. It was never expected that it would be that there would be comment on the report. It was effectively just to have it put on record, more than to have it as a discussion point and actually a view or an adoption one way or another. It's basically just for the record in response to those minutes.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson?
Yeah, I actually agree with both Councillor King and Councillor Wilson. I think consistency would be nice, Councillor King, and Councillor Wilson's quite right. But even though there are councillors such as yourself that I don't think have been consistent on this particular process. It doesn't make you wrong. I think you're quite right to complain about the process that's been followed on this occasion, and I hope that extends to other future occasions like this. I find this very unusual, and I find it unfair on yourself in this case, but it would be unfair on any councillor, as you make the point. What if it was someone else in future? We could get a plethora of letters criticising or attacking statements by councillors in meetings stuck on the formal record at subsequent meetings as a result of this process. And I think that's a slippery slope I don't want to go down. We all get letters from time to time having a go at us for things we've said or done. I got one for proposing that the police do more work around the community last time. A couple of us did. I think Councillor Chesterman got a copy of the same letter after the last meeting in this area. So, but no one asked for that to be put on the formal record, which this is being asked for now. I don't care whether it's the fire service or an individual citizen or the Prime Minister of New Zealand. They don't have that right to sort of enter after the event, stick something on the agenda that we can't have a proper debate and discussion over. Stick something on the record of the meeting that we can't have a proper debate over. That's not right, that's not good process, and it's not fair.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Just clarify for me, I perhaps just haven't quite got this. This letter was received on the 28th of October, this correspondence. When did Councillor King first cite this correspondence?
Committee members.
After this meeting was underway.
Today?
So all committee members, the letter was tabled today.
Well, this is a letter that basically deals with perceived impropriety. If I was a subject of this kind of correspondence from an organisation, I would have a little concern in terms of natural justice, without getting into the issues raised, that I would find myself sitting in a public meeting and that this was introduced as a late agenda item. And I request, the fact is I think it's appropriate that the request from the fire service in this instance have requested to be tabled at a meeting, and that's noted. But I find it really unusual in terms of natural justice that this correspondence has sat with this organisation without any knowledge of the subject of this particular correspondence, and that this becomes a late agenda item, Madam Chair. And I'm wondering, could I ask the Chief Executive, what would he expect in terms of the Local Government Act and due process should be the case in future moving forward?
I think we'll definitely take those comments on board, and I know the Democracy Manager has noted the process to be looked at, so...
Well, the problem I now have, as you've seen that, I think it's appropriate that the letter, well, it's a difficult situation, because if there's a serious correspondence that is making commentary on the actions of a fellow colleague, I'm now accepting this to be tabled as an agenda item, but in my view that colleague, irrespective of what I think of the contents of the letter, I don't think has been afforded natural justice.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to do.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Sorry, can I talk first?
Well, there was a request that hasn't been responded to.
Well, okay.
That the CEO be able to...
What I was going to do was, given the Councillor Gallagher's comments and the views around the table, was I was going to withdraw tabling this document, because that's where I think people are going to be more comfortable with, and then it can go away and we can look at a more correct process. Because Councillor McPherson, you raised a good point earlier too about the matters arising in the minutes, and I have had some conflicting advice, so I think that would be the best way forward. Your Worship?
I'm just going to make a very brief comment. I would not have supported the motion. I do not think that the letter should have been tabled. And I certainly don't think it should have been tabled without Councillor King having seen it. And what I am also concerned about is that it is very, very important that we have clarity about process. Because we've just spent, I don't know, half an hour,
15 minutes,
I'm being generous, talking about a process matter. And I think Councillor King raised some very good points. So I'm very pleased to hear, Chair, that you are withdrawing it. And can we please have the process sorted out?
Great.
Honestly and truly.
So my seconder is happy with that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Right, we're moving on to item 11, page 110. This is the enforcement options for the Central City Safety Plan.
Put it up. It's under the key.
You're still in the hot seat, Calvin. Thank you. You can take the report as read, Calvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment on some particular aspects of the enforcement plan. And the firstly is, it's like all enforcement plans, it's built upon two pillars. The first one is around visibility. That's having an enhanced being seen and being seen a lot more often. And the second part is the engagement, which is being able to in fact, engage with a wide cross-section of the community. That's our business users, all users of the public space. So firstly, you have to have a visibility and a presence. Secondly, you actually have to be seen to be doing something. And that's the pillars on which this enforcement plan is built. It's firstly, I want to just a couple of comments. It's part of an integrated suite of approaches under the City Safety Plan that Her Worship spoke to before. It is not a standalone. There is an enforcement arm, but that is a part of the overall strategy for how we manage a range of issues involving the central city area. The third one is really around safety, and it's whether it's a police issue or it's a council issue. In my view, safety is everyone's issue and everyone's responsibility, and I'm not sure it's about apportioning who has responsibility. Everyone, council included, has a role to play in enhancing safety, because at the end of the day, it should be about actually enhancing safety, perceptions of safety, and people's feelings of trust and confidence to be able to use the public spaces freely and without fear. There's some things that underline this is a new style of safety officer to be the forefront of that. That's a person who has received considerably more training in a range of areas. That's everything from the training about how to deal with de-escalating incidents, how to interpret body language, how to deal with people who are homeless by definition, their definition, and the unique relationship around engaging with those people. It's also about how to deal with people who are suffering from mental illness. It's also about how do we use the enforcement arm in a more proactive sense in being able to make referrals to, for example, the People's Project, the Night Shelter or other agencies to provide a real-time option to taking a strong enforcement approach. You should have a copy of the graduated response model there that I've developed, which is around that engagement, education and enforcement, with enforcement being the absolute end result when everything else has failed. It's about trying to, in fact, start from the engagement process. It's about there's a role for still be a city ambassador and everything from providing directions to being seen, and then it's about an escalating process of trying to bring about positive compliance. What we want as people is to have a behavioural change in a positive sense, and really the council enforcement portion of that is at the tip of the iceberg when everything else has failed. Part of that is also obviously a new way of how we utilise our staff. It's using a risk deployment, so what is our high risk times, locations, how do we deploy our staff so we have them in the right place at the right time to be able to engage with people and build some lasting relationships, both with our general public who are using the public spaces and also with our business owners as well as to our people who are at risk.
Thank you, Calvin. Councillor McPherson.
Yes. I actually think there are at least three pillars here, not just the visibility and the action, but also the resources. And I don't see anything here that talks about the extra resources that will be required for your new style of safety officer, Kelvin, which is being proposed, your description. That's a combination, it seems to me, of police, welfare and health training is needed. You mentioned all three of those areas. I certainly don't support something where I can't see costs, where it's clear that there's going to be extra costs. Even discussion in the lunchroom, there seemed to be acknowledgement from some other councillors who were present during that discussion that there would be extra costs. Just like some of the councillors complained on another separate issue earlier in the meeting, that they would like to see get an idea of the costs beforehand. I would like to get an idea of what we're talking about here. Is it just a few extra hours training for the existing officers? Is it more officers? Is it completely different people with new training? Are we going to pay them more than the relatively low pay they get at the moment? I don't have a sense of any of that. This report, even though it's just receiving it, is essentially asking us to endorse spending more money, it seems to me, and I don't even have a problem with that necessarily, given the previous motion that was passed, if I knew the amount, the quantum we're talking about.
I can answer that for you. There is no request for any increase in funding. It will be baseline, consistent with what we have now. We're already delivering through the CitySafe module. What it is, we are going to have a different style of person, a higher trained group of people who are going through some training, and they will deliver that. What we will do is we will deploy them differently, and so they'll be using the same funding arrangement that we have now. We're not asking at this point in time for any additional funding to provide the service. But where we have CitySafe currently who are deployed in pairs, we will deploy our new people because they'll be higher trained with a wider skill set. We'll deploy them individually, and in fact, if you're looking at it in the total area of coverage, we'll in fact get more coverage in terms of hours of delivery than we get now.
Calvin, Councillor McPherson, the GM's going to answer the specific question on the budget.
I was just going to remind councillors that through the annual plan process, you'll recall that there was a significant increase in the commitment to city safety, and the budgets were increased across a range of metrics, including those which supported specifically into the staff on the ground.
So are you saying that this new concept that we're just deciding now was pre-thought of during the annual plan time, and we allowed for that in the increased budget we approved back then, Blair?
I'm saying that the annual plan process identified a range of areas where council wished to invest, and council and this plan is supporting that.
I asked quite specifically whether this new plan, which has just come to us now, in these two items, was thought of when that budgeting exercise was done back in the annual plan.
The CE standing to answer.
And on a talk as the previous CFO.
Which hat are you wearing?
Yeah, that's right, I can wear both. So when we did when we came forward for the annual plan, we had a specific proposal to increase the coverage area and the duration of time that the current CitySafe officers were working. So it's nothing to do with this proposal. It was the current staff that we've currently got, not the new up-trained staff that it was referred to. So there was a proposal put forward, and that was voted on by this council to adopt that greater coverage. And I think this also included a greater coverage of like lunchtime, coverage at lunchtime as well, and cameras as well. So there's a package put forward that was voted on. So it wasn't a specific proposal. It was a proposal in line with increasing our safety profile in the city. And this is a further step down that direction with some tweaking of the way we manage our coverage. We're going to do it from the same budget that's already approved in the annual plan.
Thanks for that reassurance. I did have a couple of follow-up questions. Yep. You did say, Kelvin, that you're not seeking any extra money at this point in time. Those are your words. So that's a bit of a concern, because at what point might it come back to us for more money? And the second one, which actually concerns me perhaps more, is you're talking, I can understand financially what you're talking about, in terms of you used to have two doing this, now you're only having one. They're higher trained and they may be higher paid. But even the police rarely have single people out for very good security, safety reasons. They have them in pairs. So I just noticed a pair downtown before, because I am aware of the increased coverage the police have been putting in recently. I wasn't aware of some of the discussions behind it, but I certainly have seen it myself. They don't put single people out there. Isn't that a security issue, safety issue in its own right for the council staff if you're sending them out into issues that, circumstances that can be contentious at times?
I certainly don't believe it's a security issue. There would be double ups during the hours of darkness, but during the day, the opportunity is to have a higher increased visibility and therefore an ability to actually engage earlier with people across the inner city.
So the first question then is the budget. At this point in time, you're not asking for any more, in other words, right now, but what about,
Sorry,
what are we leading towards?
I'll withdraw those last two words.
Okay.
That was a direct reference to your earlier question.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Comment.
Councillor King?
Will the new patrols carry push-to-talk radios?
Yes. The existing staff carry push-to-talk radios as well.
And recording devices for video to show what had gone on?
Not at this stage, but it's one of the things we will look at in due course. But at this stage, they won't be. But they will have iPads and the like for some real-time recording in terms of using GIS coding to record exactly where an event has occurred and who was involved and what was involved. So we actually have some valid data on which we can use then to use our risk-based deployment methodology.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I've got to... actually, we need a mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Tooman. So, Councillor Gallagher, would you like to speak?
Yes, I mean, I think this report is well written and well summarised, and I certainly acknowledge my colleagues' observations around funding, and albeit noted the annual plan, and obviously this will be part of the LTB discussion as well. Obviously, I'll be keeping an idea on how the sort of single deployment works, because we've got, and I hear what you say for after dark, but we've got issues around ambulance staff double crewing. We've got a whole issue of security and safety, and if there are problems arise, how two people are often better collaboratively to sort stuff. Obviously, I'm hearing that clearly we'll be paying a living wage to our people out there on the ground, given the complexity and the skill mix that we will be asking of them, and I take that as a given. Obviously, I'm sure we'll pay nothing less. I'm really interested, if you can, in this report, bring us along and keep us updated around the enhanced training of city safe staff. Also be looking at the how the collaborative approach is working, and obviously I recognise not just the excellent People's Project, Homeless Shelter, Māori Wardens, DHB, mental health teams, CAT teams, all of that. And I think I'm going to be listening with great interest as to the sort of interface between our team and the New Zealand Police. And I'm going to listen with great interest to your own professional perspective of how effective that is, or whether we need to do more lobbying or not. The other thing which I would make the point is that I think, for example, we have an excellent subcommittee in terms of the Civil Defence Group, and we've got people in a governance sense, as I've said before, in terms of Leo and Margaret, who have very good professional expertise. Not telling you how to do your job, because I realise you have a very impressive CV in your own right, but I think it's really important that there's a good reference group and a reference relationship with elected members in terms of our community, representation. And I certainly like the green bit in terms of the engagement and the city ambassador, because it seems to me if we do the skilled bit around engage and educate, then only a small minority of cases in the end should be an enforcement.
Correct.
But, and you know all that, and I respect that. But I think certainly also want to pick up your longer term plan and, some of those challenges there, and how our other agencies, how do our other sections of council, be it the parking team, the stationary traffic enforcement team, how do they relate to all this? So, in summary, I think this is a good report. I think we're on a positive direction, but I certainly would urge you and the CEO to keep us in the loop as this progresses.
Councillor Mallett.
Just a question on the status of Councillor Gallagher's comments about the living wage. Do they carry any weight?
Well, no, he's entitled to express his words around his debate any way that he chooses.
Okay,
so
just
that's
very,
he's forming an
very-
opinion. Councillor,
Very strong
no,
suggestion
Councillor
that
Mallett,
I'm
he's
sure they will be paid
perfectly
the living
entitled
wage.
to express his views the way that he
What
did.
if he's incorrect?
He's Councillor Mallett.
We shouldn't
just
pay a living wage to
answer your
people who do this job.
question.
It's interesting.
So, Deputy Mayor.
So look, I will support absolutely the right of Councillor Gallagher to raise the living wage. My advice would be that we should be checking with the DHB because the reference point is their security staff. So we do need to know what Councillor Gallagher, in his role as a DHB member, has supported in terms of the large number of security staff employed up there. So I think that that's almost a benchmark for this type of work.
I assure you, and the point's well made, and thank you. And we appreciate your support in that particular issue.
Thank you, Councillor. All right. Any further speakers? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any against? Councillor McPherson is against. Right, thank you. Item 12, page 113, report to update us on the appeal lodged with the Environment Court. Who's in the hot seat?
Madam Chair, this is a pretty straightforward report. I think it's very self-explanatory. It's a designation process. The designation hearing proceeded. The Commission has heard the evidence, made a recommendation. Education didn't accept that recommendation, and we've appealed in relation to a number of matters. And those matters are largely to protect the amenity and interests of residents that are largely beside schools. We have, in the past, I have to say, have managed these issues very amicably and low-key, and it's quite a surprise to me that Ministry of Education have taken this position. I think it's highly likely we'll resolve the matter through mediation, and this is just bringing it to your attention.
Great, thank you. Councillor Pascoe.
Just one very quick question around the, and it's covered in paragraph 15, by including additional land within the existing designation for educational purposes, does that mean that that land, which presumably is currently rateable, then becomes non-rateable?
I might ask the ex-CFO to answer that one. I don't know.
I'll have to follow that up.
Yeah, if it moves into Crown, I suppose it would be.
So is it private land at the moment?
No, it'll be owned by Education, but they'll be seeking to designate it for school purposes.
Yep.
So what this is about really is, what we do is tend to intervene where it's necessary through the school building programs to make sure there's proper landscaping to protect the interface with houses, making sure the traffic movements are acceptable in residential neighbourhoods, that type of thing.
So we would not ordinarily object on the basis if it was rateable land and was going into a designation as educational land.
No,
We would not object to the fact that we would be losing rating.
Rating would be an irrelevant consideration under the RMA. It's
Okay.
a relevant matter.
I think just conferring with the CEO, the land regularly changes nature, education, churches, etc., and that's a matter that just works its way through the rating valuation system. Happens on a regular basis.
Your Worship?
Just need to get clarification as to the reason why they didn't accept the Commissioner's recommendation. Because there's a bunch of schools here. Why did they not?
Your Worship, I'll just ask one of the staff members to answer that, please. It's been involved in the discussion.
Alice and Amy. Hi. Hi. Welcome.
The Ministry
as the requiring authority, are wanting to retain flexibility so that they can manage the designation of the schools.
You're a bit
as
hard
they
to
see
hear.
fit. Sorry.
Might just
You see these mics just not long enough for you.
it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, should I start again?
Yes, please.
Sure. So the ministry as a requiring authority are wanting to retain flexibility so that they can manage the designations of the schools in the future as they see fit.
So a follow-up question to that. They want to ensure that they can deal with their footprint as a school without interference from us.
It's, the interference isn't with regards to stopping the
No,
development.
activity, I get that, but
But
it's
it would be
putting
to-
rules and...
That they don't presently have, but they are rules, they are conditions that we would, if it was a brand new notice of requirement, they would be the standard conditions that we would impose.
Can I ask a follow-up question? What's happening with other schools around New Zealand in regard to this? If the practice has been, this is normal, and now this has changed direction, what's happening in other areas in relation to this particular issue?
So practice now is to actually impose conditions. These schools, the designations have been around for quite some time, and there was a practice not to impose conditions when old designations were imposed originally,
Right.
and they just roll. What happens at the through the review process of the district plan is that all requiring authorities are asked whether or not they want to roll their designations, modify their designations, or add new designations. So the ministry had, through these schools, has over the years grown their pieces of land and done that through resource consent. They wanted to then encompass that through designations, so they sought modifications to their existing designations. And at that point, we have the ability to impose or recommend conditions to be imposed so that the residential amenity is protected.
Okay, sorry, but I do have another question. So if we just let this lie and did not oppose what they want to do, the end result would be that basically they could build up to the boundary and do their footprint and cover their entire footprint with a school. They wouldn't have to worry
As
about...
long as it was for education purposes, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and people choose to live around a school, they know it's a school and it's easy, you can just whip over the back fence and you're at the school.
That's correct, but these pieces of land have presently or were not part of the school in terms of a designation previously.
But they were designated education purposes.
Yes, that's right.
Previously.
The original.
Yeah, original designation was education purposes, yeah. Okay, question to the General Manager, what's the cost of this process?
It'll depend on how far it runs. If it gets into an Environment Court hearing, it's obviously more than if it's resolved through mediation.
Yep, so estimate?
I don't know.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Question, Councillor King?
So just to be really clear, what we're saying is the school can't do what they want with their own land as far as expanding for education purposes on their own land that's designated as a school area. So they can't build their buildings on sports fields and in different places.
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that through a designation that the school can operate as a school and do what it requires in terms of being for education purposes, but it must do that within the conditions would then address any amenity issues. So, for instance, noise, car parking and hours of operation, to be able to provide that amenity for the residential area. So it's not stopping. There is no issue at all about the education purposes operating on those sites. It's really just to provide a balance and to bring these designations in line with best practice that's occurring now.
Right, thank you.
So you mean things like light spill from floodlights affecting a neighbour sorry, I just want to be clear on why a school can't do whatever a school has always done with their own land.
I think that's because in terms of all land management, there are controls to avoid any adverse effects on surrounding environments. And in terms of the conditions, they aren't stopping, they're just providing a set of parameters so that we avoid that amenity issue being in conflict with the residential surrounding area.
And if we do nothing, there's no parameters in place at all?
No, there are no parameters, there are no conditions in place at this present point in time.
So what's happened in the past?
So they have in the past usually applied for what's known as an outline plan of works, and council an outline plan of works, and council through our regulatory planning guidance processes those. If there are conditions on a designation, we marry up the proposal with those conditions. If there are none, it is solely that the activity is for education purposes, and therefore they could build up to the boundary, they could increase their car parking, and then there could be the issue with neighbours then finding that the school environment that they're happy with is actually expanded, and then there's an effect on them that they hadn't anticipated. So hence conditions help manage that, and conditions are imposed, I should say, for not only school designations, but all designations in this day.
So has there ever been a problem in the past? Because there hasn't been, these parameters or designations haven't been in place in the past.
There have been issues in the past when neighbours have felt that their amenity has changed when a school has been able to develop without any conditions.
Develop for education purposes?
Yes, solely for education purposes, because that's what the designation is allowing.
Thank you.
Councillor Mallett?
Just so I can get my head around this, so some of the degradation that goes on could be lots of cars there at 8:30 and lots of cars there at 3:30 and probably at 5 o'clock when sports is over, floodlights, and you're saying the designation, you're trying to get some conditions on the designation such that floodlights or parking or building right to the can be factored into that, so the school can't do that. But what happened was our commissioner said, yep, let's do that, but the Environmental Court turned that down. Is that right?
Well, the process of a designation under the Environment Act is slightly different. So the Independent Planning Commissioner made a recommendation on behalf of council to the requiring authority, and the requiring authority has the final say, so to speak.
And the requiring authority at the moment is the Ministry of Education, is it?
That's right, in this instance, and they rejected those conditions. And council's only avenue is to appeal to ensure that discussion can continue.
And is your recommendation that we do appeal because you're concerned that?
So council presently has lodged an appeal.
Yeah.
And this report is to be received by the committee for information purposes.
Yep.
And I can advise that tomorrow there is a meeting set up with the ministry to see in terms of where the parties are at, and we will then be able to take it from there. But until we have that meeting, we won't understand anything further at this point.
I'm just going to go to the GM.
Just, councillors, I think for this particular matter, it's obviously clear that this item probably should have come to a briefing, and then councillors kept appraised possibly through the executive update channel. So I think in terms of future matters such as this, that may be a better opportunity to allow visibility of the matter, and then regular updates through executive update.
Yeah. Yeah. Good idea.
What's going to happen at tomorrow's hearing?
So it's not a hearing, it's a meeting, and as per all appeal meetings, they are actually on a confidential basis, and we would report that back to council in an appropriate manner.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so this is recommendations on page 114. It's just that the report be received.
I'll move the report be received.
Thank you,
I'll
Deputy
second.
Deputy Mayor, and seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those, any debate? No, all those in favour? Any against? That's carried, thank you.
Just a question on that. Blair did make a helpful suggestion that maybe
Yeah.
some sort of work. Is there, are we going to do that? Or is it too late?
I think it's too late for this particular one, but I think we would note that for these sorts of matters in the future, we have the executive update and we obviously have the briefing process, and it's probably a more appropriate way to give that information to council.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, item 13, as we know, has been pulled. Item 14, page 127. This is retrospective approval of a submission to NZTA. We'll take the report as read. You've got lots of folders there. So welcome Mark and Paul. Welcome. Ready on hand for any questions of the committee? Councillor McPherson?
I just had one, I don't have the map in front of me now, but you've got the changed alignment for Ruakura Road in there, which swings a fair bit south, if my reckoning's right, from where it is now. Is the old bit of Ruakura Road remain there? It's not clear, you know, how it goes more or less alongside the railway line. You can see it in grey in there. The reason I'm asking that is because I'm just sort of, it seems quite a big dog leg, the new alignment of Ruakura Road, and I'm wondering whether, in the back of my mind, is that being done to make it easier for TGH to have a much bigger inland port sort of staging area than would have been available if the old Ruakura Road alignment had stayed, or something closer to that. It seems to be sort of, from the plans I've seen of the inland port area in the past, that the container storage area or whatever it's called, that's sort of a pretty ideal area for them, and I'm not sure whether it's such an ideal alignment of a public road.
As far as I'm aware, the proposal is just the cul-de-sac, Ruakura Road, where it will be severed by the expressway.
So just that little bit of yellow you can tag, you can see in the map. I should get my map. Yeah, just, sorry, mine, the one I was looking at is yellow, just it goes a couple hundred metres from that, along the alignment of where it currently is.
Yes,
thanks.
As far as your comments about the inland port, between the relocated Ruakura Road and the railway line, the inland port is located right against the railway line, and then between the inland port and the relocated Ruakura Road is part of the logistics area. So I don't think, I'm unaware of what discussions have taken place between Tainui Group Holdings and NZTA about the location of that, but the location of the relocated Ruakura Road is consistent with the decision of the Board of Inquiry on the Ruakura Development Plan change.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're doing the design, Paul, not the politics behind it. Yeah, so I just seems extremely convenient to me, and I didn't think the Board of Inquiry had come up with a set position exactly. It had the connections, but you know, I don't think we can get much further here. I just think it's designed to help maximise the help for TGH.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett, and then your worship.
Thank you. On page 132, and I'm not familiar with how these documents work, because it looks like there's one document and then it's sort of the same document repeated again, but paragraph 19, Hamilton City Council seeks for the following amendments to condition 2.2 Romans 14, I think it is, of the Hamilton City, the Hamilton City conditions, and then 2.2 Romans 14, the restriction of truck traffic from using Silverdale Road south of its junction with Hillcrest Road. What is that saying? That no trucks can go down there, or there is some restriction doesn't necessarily mean none, just means, or does it mean none, or does it mean certain times of the day, or certain sizes, or what?
The intention was that there would be, that the construction traffic carrying, construction traffic, carrying fill and construction materials to the site would not use Silverdale Road.
So this is just for the term of the construction of the port, is it?
For the construction of the works that are covered by the designation, which are the interchange and
Sorry, the
connecting
interchange.
roads.
Yep. So what does that mean?
There will be, broadly speaking, there's two alternative routes that the construction traffic could take from likely borrow sites. One is approaching from the existing Rurakura from the east, and the other one is using the construction corridor itself as a means of carrying the fill that's required to where
You're confident that's what that says?
Well, you've raised the point that it's restriction rather than excluded, but the hearing has yet to take place, so we can clarify those things in the course of the hearing.
Because I couldn't understand what it meant. Yeah, okay.
Hi, Phil. Welcome to the table.
Sorry, thanks.
Thank you.
Perhaps I could help explain from a transport point of view. It is really, we do want to prohibit the construction traffic from using that road, particularly through the school and the residential area. There is an alternate route for them through the rural area from the other side, as you see on one of those other maps. So we're really just making a point that the construction traffic should not use the residential street, and that will be part of the process.
So that wording just might need to be changed, like prohibited. The word prohibited needs to be in there.
I think we've used the word restriction in the past, and it's meant the same thing. So we could change the word, but it's meant the same thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Worship.
No, I don't.
No.
I don't want to get into it, really.
Any further questions, Councillor Mallett?
Just one other. What is wayfinding signage?
Direction signage, destinations, yes.
It's a new word for directional.
Fantasy words department thereof?
Okay, thank you.
Finding the way.
So why do we, no, seriously though, why don't we use the word that's in the dictionary rather than making up a word?
I think.
Words have meanings, it's important that they get used properly. We're not in Toyland.
All right, that's enough. Any further questions on the report? Do I have a mover of the report? Thank you, Councillor Toomans. Seconded. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Right. Item 15, page 178, Regional Operations Roundup Report. Hi, Phil. You can take the report as read.
I'll move.
Moved by Her Worship. Any seconder? Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Is there any questions? Comments? Questions?
We're still talking about a final draft, aren't we? Page 179, 14, the final draft. So we're still not...
Absolutely.
Still not at an end yet?
That's correct, Councillor. It is a draft until after the public consultation, and then they've taken that on board and report back to the Regional Council for final adoption.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher?
Just if Councillor Toomans, do you have anything to add?
Civil Defence?
Just picking up on the point of Councillor Mallett, I think the hearings for the Regional Land Transport Plan are 15th, 16th, 17th of February next year, with the deliberations 4th, 5th and 6th of March. One other thing, the Regional Speed Management Governance Group, very happy to see that coming through. It's a long time overdue that we actually put a blanket 100k on our New Zealand roads, which is totally inappropriate in some areas, whether it be too slow or too fast. For example, the Coromandel, of course, I defy anybody to travel around there at a constant 100 kilometres per hour. And yet on the expressway to Auckland, probably 100k, where you've got divided mediums and the whole new way of safer journeys, of course, is let's hope we can get 110 kilometres all the way to Auckland. So, yeah, it's good to see that the Waikato is actually starting to lead the way as far as New Zealand is concerned. And it's now good to see that the NZTA have come out with their proposals for the various classifications of the roads and accordingly with the speed management in progress. So that's about it.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Just how might that, I mean, for example, the relevance of, we've got the Whatawhata Road, State Highway to Raglan, we've got that area where it's 50, 100, where the view should be, 50, 80, 100, that on the edges of Dinsdale. Does this work help inform some of this kind? I mean, it's that sort of a micro detail, but it's just wanting to not sort of spend a year and a month, whereas it seems to me the issue of flexibility and particularly, and Tikopa as an example, where you suddenly go 100 to 50, which is truly bizarre. I don't know if either of you could answer if this work is going to help some of those obvious.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, through that, there are rules around speed changes, speed limit changes, and I think the NZTA or the Ministry of Transport have rules that don't want to have short lengths of speed, but we are introducing in that area an 80k section. So there is a transition down, and that 80k will be adopted by NZTA. They can do that, and they're in the process of doing that now after that discussion on site.
Sure. I guess I'm focusing on the flexibleness and nimbleness of being able to sort of, instead of spending 5 years, what's the reasonable sort of process? And I realise it's beyond me or an elected member having a good idea, but it's also relating to community concern and evidence, and particularly in that, it's a good case on the edge of Dinsdale, of the changing settlement patterns where you're having more local traffic.
That's correct, and it's up to the road controlling authority. In that case, it is NZTA. So it's up to them to take representation from us and the community and to then reflect that back in their assessment, which includes safety and all road users, as well as accesses to properties.
Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, Phil, I've raised this before, and it's not something directed at you, but it's you or Leo's knowledge about our surrounding councils, who are also road controlling authorities, sometimes on roads that directly adjoin us and that Hamilton residents use regularly. What sort of pressure is going on them to have the same? Are we all councils going to follow the same process? Because, I mean, if anyone travelling north on the old State Highway 1 at Horatū, would know that you go from, in a matter of metres, from 80 to 70, and you can't tell the difference in the road there. It's ridiculous and actually adds to confusion, but simply because Waikato District have their own policy, which is several years behind even NZTA's, let alone Hamilton City Councils, and it doesn't really help when you've got different guidelines / rules applying in directly neighbouring sort of areas.
Councillor McPherson, that's correct. That's one of the main reasons why the whole system is being updated and upgraded and improved. The approach is a one network classification system as well. That's linked in with the safer journeys, where the roads will be in the process of being classified into from a customer point of view for that customer experience. So for the type of road and the type of speed environment, it is a common experience. So where there are changes, there will be rules set in place, and then it's up to those district councils to actually implement the right road environment. So that will take a bit of time.
That's the problem.
But it will take time.
Up to them. But
no, the requirement will be put in place as a strategy, and then it's up to each council then to implement where they can, subject to their ability.
So at the moment, Waikato District, by way of example, is hiding behind one arm of NZTA, which says the assessment for that bit of road says it can be 100 k's, whereas the Safer Journeys part of NZTA is saying, well, actually, you should consider a lower speed for that sort of road?
Well, I believe the working party that Councillor Toomey is chairing will certainly look at that. I think that's one of the key things.
Okay, thanks.
Right, there being no further questions, can I have a, it's been moved by Her Worship the Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Item number 16, the action list, page 189. A much more efficient action list. It was getting to become bigger than Ben Hur, so I want to thank Blair for and his team for doing that. I just wanted to highlight down on the meeting date, down the bottom, 3rd of September 14, the Psychoactive Substances Policy Regulations. I want to add on to the recommendation. I'm happy to move the report that this come to the first briefing in the new year, because my concerns around the regulations still stand, and I want elected members to be over that, particularly in the new part of the regulations that talks about areas that are frequented by minors, and I think that has an impact on our policy, and I want to be ahead of the game, not behind the game. So I'm happy to move that with the addition that it come to the first briefing in the new year.
I'll second.
If I have a seconder, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Are there any questions or comments on the action list? Councillor Mallett?
Just a sort of standard question. When the status is in progress, that means that the staff are confident that they're going to meet the timetable in the action thing. Is that right?
That's correct, or matters have been worked on, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher?
Yeah, just the going back to the minutes on page 11 around the sustainability report. So we had a resolution of the previous council, went off to the sustainability group. It seems to me, I'm just wanting through the chair to Blair or the CEO that should sit. Would that not? That should surely sit in there. I realise there's more work to be done. Shouldn't that sit in an action list because it was a resolution from the previous council?
Just need to check that, but I think that was you talking about.
If I missed it, I might have missed it.
The resolution from the subcommittee, is it?
No, there's a resolution of the previous council that set up the panel, right?
Yeah, the sustainability report.
So basically it's just a matter of the direction of travel. I realise there's further work to do, and I know the staff's going to report back to all of council at the appropriate time, but it just seems to me surely you'd have that in the grid there because it's an action.
I'll look into that. Yes.
Yeah. So perhaps just not have a minute note on that. Just all on. Yeah, it's just adding into the action list. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. No further questions or comments on the action list.
Oh, just one other, the cycle waste plan, would that be added to that list for next year as well?
Yeah.
Yes, that's due to come.
I just couldn't see it on
Added into the grid.
Yeah, it has fallen off, hasn't it? Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. Right, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any against? Very quiet committee today. Thank you, that's been carried. Sorry, item 17, page 204. I'll move that. Anyone like to second my report?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any discussion?
I think doggies is unparliamentary language.
Oh, well, I'm not in Parliament. So I just wanted to just briefly talk to my report. I want to thank Her Worship the Mayor and the councillors for a long year in strategy and policy. We've had a lot of hearings and a lot of meetings and a lot of plans and a lot of submissions and a lot of everything. and particularly thank you to the staff too. Thank you to Blair and Aaron and the team, my deputy chair over here, and the democracy staff as well, for supporting the committee in their work.
Do you undertake to have a quieter year next year?
That's up to you guys. I'm only one vote round the table. Yes, it would be good, wouldn't it? Right, so all those in favour?
Aye.
Any against?
Just thank you.
You against my report?
Congratulations to you, and also thank you for that item you wrote at the top of page 2. And lest we forget
Yes.
that amazing team, and it's very well said.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Thank you. Right, that's been passed. We do have a page missing, which is just to move into public excluded, so you should have that as well for the final item. So I will move that we move into public excluded. Do I have a seconder?
Um,